Great. Thank you so much, Natalia. Again, my name is Tira, and I'm the Vice President for Admission and Financial Aid at Harvey Mudd. Just in the middle, I guess, almost of my 19th year at Harvey Mudd, so long time now. But what we want you to take away from today's program is really the idea of, can you see yourself at Harvey Mudd, is what we are sharing with you about Harvey Mudd, its mission, its value. Does that resonate with you? Does it seem like a community where you could find a home? So Natalia, if you want to switch to the next slide. Thank you. So a couple things in this very brief introduction, two things. First is that Harvey Mudd is extremely mission driven. And what does that mean? It means that when the college was founded 70 years ago now, we're just celebrating our 70th anniversary, the founders sat back and said, do more thing. And I would advise you to take institutions, look at the mission statements that they have. You can learn quite a bit about a school in just one sentence. And you'll see here the Harvey Mudd mission is on the screen. I'm not going to read it to you, but you'll notice the real stressing things that we're stressing there are that we are very much focused on STEM. You'll see that when we talk about our majors and all of that. But we also care deeply about the humanities, social sciences, and the arts. And often, believe it or not, that's what makes students decide to come to Harvey Mudd, because they don't want to give up all of the other things that they're very excited about. But perhaps part of this discussion really is the idea of that last underlined phrase, students graduating with a clear understanding of the impact of their work on society. And not only is that really what today's entire program is about, but we want our students to know why they're doing the work they're doing and how it impacts those around you. Even though I love our mission statement, I am in some ways, I like even more a phrase that our founding trustees used back when we were founded, and that is, technology divorced from humanity is worse than no technology at all. So everything you're going to hear us talk about is very, very high level work in the STEM fields, but in the context of a liberal arts education. And we actually call ourselves the Liberal Arts College of Math, Science, and Engineering. You'll notice some enrollment statistics there. We are the smallest of the Claremont I'm going to talk about in a moment, at just over 900. The fact that on average, half of our students identify as female, and that has been the case now for a few years. It's not a common thing that you see at most technically based institutions, and on average, about 40% of our faculty does as well. You'll see on the map here that we are in Claremont, California. Looking at the list of places that everyone said that they are checking in from, clearly you are from all around the country and the world, but we are very much in the heart of Southern California. And why that matters is because it's an amazing place to go to school. The weather and everything is wonderful, and that's for sure. So 35 miles outside the United States, and an incredibly culturally rich and diverse place to go to school. It's about a 15-minute walk from our campus to the downtown Claremont, where the train station is, and about an hour-long train ride into downtown LA. But on top of that, we are in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains. That's what you see behind me in my photo. We are also about an hour west of Palm Springs in the desert, and without traffic, which we realize is not really a thing here, but we are about 45 minutes to the beaches, to Disneyland and Universal Studios. So lots of access to an exciting area of this. Slide, Natalia. Thank you. Something else that really distinguishes us, however, is that we are part of something called the Claremont Colleges, and we are the only planned college consortium in the United States. Now, what does that mean? If you look at the map that's here on the slide, we are all right next to each other, 5 undergraduate colleges and 2 graduate institutions, and we are all located in 1 square mile. So it's not like other consortia where you may get on a bus and go place to place. Here, you literally walk across the street and you're on another campus. To get from Harvey Mudd to Pitzer, you literally walk get there. So we are very, very much next to each other. If you walked from Harvey Mudd, the furthest northern campus, to Pomona, which is the furthest southern campus, it might take you 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how quickly you walk. And I will say a lot of our students use various kinds of wheels to get around, but it's important that we are all right next to each other. An equally important part of the consortium is who the 5 colleges are. Any one of the 5 of us would be a remarkable place on our own, but altogether, we essentially give you the advantages of a small liberal arts college, but the resources of a small to mid-sized university. So we share things, services, counseling services, campus full music programs, but students have access to all sorts of other things on the Claremont colleges. Students can eat their meals in any of the different dining halls. I will say, being Harvey Mudd, we have data that shows that Harvey Mudd is one of the top choices for students for their meals. We have delicious food. But in addition to that, you can join 250 to 300 different clubs and organizations. But the most important thing is that as a student at Harvey Mudd, it's not just that you will take classes at any or all of the other Claremont colleges. So that means that you have about 2,500 courses to choose from. And with some very clear exceptions, you have the same chance of classes at other Claremont colleges as are constantly all day moving among the 5 institutions. And so that means that essentially you have all of these resources across the street, but you also have your own campus right within Harvey Mudd. So I think students have sort of different levels of loyalty, but first is to their own college and then to perhaps our sports teams. So we have 2 different sports teams, but we combine Claremont McKenna, Harvey Mudd, and Scripps is one team, and then Pomona and Pitzer is the other, and we actually play against each other. So it's kind of an interesting setup. But so you can learn more about the Claremont colleges, but it is a very, very important part of our own identity, and then really dramatically increases the resources that our students have access to. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to one of my absolute favorite people on campus. We're not supposed to have favorites, but Professor Daryl Young, who is also a Harvey Mudd alum, and he is going to give you an academic overview. So Daryl, on to you.
Thanks so much, Tara. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to get to see some of your faces. If your videos are on or not, it's totally fine either way. My name is Daryl Young. I'm a math professor at Harvey Mudd College, and this is my 24th year as a faculty member here. And as Tara said, I was a student. I was a math major. I graduated from Harvey Mudd in the 90s. And so I'm here sharing with you about the curriculum in my capacity as the core curriculum director. And so for the next few minutes, what I'll do is I'll share with you a bit about what academics looks like at Harvey Mudd. And by the way, feel free, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll try to monitor the things that you put in there. So, all right, the thing that I hope that you'll take away from the next few minutes is that strong mission statement that Tira mentioned to you earlier, we really do mean it, and you'll see it reflected in our curriculum. So one of the most distinctive features about Harvey Mudd is our liberal arts approach to STEM, to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that commitment is going to be really obvious when you look at the depth and breadth of our curriculum. So next slide, please. Roughly speaking, Harvey Mudd students spend about 1/3 of their coursework in what we call our core curriculum, about 1/3 in the humanities, social sciences, and the arts. We call it HSA, so that's why you see that in orange. And then about 1/3 in their chosen major. So over the next 3 slides, I'll try to describe these 3 pieces: core, HSA, and major. Next slide, please. So HMC's core curriculum is the set of courses that every student has to take regardless of their major. And it might be what might be called general education requirement at some schools, but here at Harvey Mudd, we think of it as the core because it's so central to everything that we do here. So the core curriculum helps students gain hands-on experiences with all of our academic departments and to learn about different disciplinary tools and ways of thinking about the world's most challenging issues. And through this core, students learn how to work across disciplines, to communicate, and to collaborate with one another. So on the screen, you'll see a snapshot of what the first 2 years of coursework at Harvey Mudd College might look like. So we have fall and spring semesters, not quarters here. And so what you'll see is that during the first year, most of the curriculum is taken up by the core curriculum in those gold rectangles. And those include courses in every STEM discipline. So basically, regardless of your chosen major, if you chose to come to Harvey Mudd, among other things, all students would have to take a computer science course, a course in special relativity, linear algebra, and you would learn how to build an underwater robot through our engineering systems course in the third semester. And all of these courses culminate in what we call the impact course in the fourth semester, which is the little bit that we're going to kind of preview for you in today's session. So that course is taught by multiple faculty members across disciplines, and it's designed to give students some of the tools to understand the ways that STEM and society interact with each other. So Harvey Mudd College's core curriculum is very challenging. It's been that way as long as I remember, even when I was a student. But what you'll find here is that our very high standards are matched with very supportive and a collaborative environment. So if you have a question about your core chemistry course, you'll have about 920 students to talk to who have either gone through or are going through that exact same course too. And Mudders are known for being super helpful to one another. Many places I think that you'll visit will say that, but I think you really need to talk to current students and visit our campus to truly see that for yourself. And of course, besides the students, all of the faculty and staff here are very supportive as well. All right, next slide, please. So the second component of the three, remember the three are core, HSA, and major. So the second one is HSA, Humanities, Social Sciences, and the Arts. At Harvey Mudd College, we believe that the humanities, social sciences, and the arts, they're not just nice hobbies, they're actually essential for contextualizing and understanding the work that we all do in STEM. So that's why roughly 1/3 of your coursework will be in these areas. The thing I want you to know is that Harvey Mudd College isn't just looking for people who really, really love math or really, really love physics, because those are wonderful. But what we're looking for is we're looking for people who are passionate about STEM and also passionate about the humanities, social sciences, and the arts, and see those disciplines as indispensable. So if that's you, I hope you'll really give us a close look. And so why do we believe that one should, just back one slide, please, thanks. So why do we believe that one should be well-versed in the humanities, social sciences, and the arts to be a good scientist, engineer, or mathematician? And the reason is that we believe you can't really tackle big, important questions like climate change, for example, without having a broad understanding about political systems, economic forces, the history of science, architecture, and so many other fields. So the breadth and depth of our curriculum really applies to the humanities, social sciences, and the arts as well. And so at Harvey Mudd College, students essentially have to complete like almost like a mini minor in a chosen field. We call it here a concentration, while at the same time exploring a spectrum of other fields. So that's why you see in orange, there's the horizontal breadth, and then there's the concentration going down. That's the breadth and the depth requirement. And as Tira mentioned, one of the amazing benefits of Harvey Mudd is that it's part of the Claremont Consortium. So our students get to choose from hundreds and hundreds of courses across all kinds of fields at the Claremont colleges. A concrete example of that is when I was a Harvey Mudd student, I was able to take piano lessons and perform a piano concerto in my senior year through Scripps College. And that wouldn't have been possible if Mudd was on its own. And so that incredible course selection means that you can go really deep in whatever your interests are while also learning broadly across many fields. All right, so now the next slide, please. This next slide is about the major. So the third component of the curriculum here is the major, and this is where students will dive into a discipline or a set of disciplines of their choice. Now, Harvey Mudd College students don't actually declare a major until the end of their second year, and that's because we hope that through the core, they'll get a taste for what kinds of problems are out there and how each discipline can contribute. And when it comes time to choosing a major, we have 6 different standalone majors and 8 joint majors, including the 3 green highlighted ones that are our newest ones centered around climate change, spearheaded by our Hickson Center for the Climate and the Environment. And definitely, if you're interested in that, please, I hope you'll ask questions and learn more about that. So basically the Harvey Mudd curriculum here. Sorry, I'm very mathy, right? So the Harvey Mudd curriculum, I think of it as kind of like a fractal. It's sort of a pattern of breadth and depth, but it applies at every level. So it applies at the core, it applies at the HSA level, applies in the major as well. So you'll notice that we don't offer very narrow majors like mechanical engineering or applied mathematics. We only offer engineering. We only offer mathematics. And the reason is that as a liberal arts college, we want our students to be broadly trained across subfields. That's why our graduates are often nicknamed translators of the workforce by employers. But don't misunderstand as well. So Harvey Mudd graduates aren't just generalists because through the majors, you also go super deep in one chosen subfield of your discipline. Next slide, please. And one of the ways that that happens is through research. So every major has some kind of capstone experience that students have to complete in their final year. And so that's why we say that 100% of our students do research. Every major has a different capstone option, but every Harvey Mudd student will either do a senior capstone project through our senior thesis program or our clinic program. Through the capstone experience, every student gets to engage in research in their chosen discipline, and it's not uncommon for students to patent inventions or publish original research articles as a result of their work. So some of the thesis titles are on this page, and on the next slide, you'll get to see some examples of some recent clinic program sponsors. I wish I had more time to go deep into clinic, but definitely look up what clinic is. These are our capstone year-long experiences where students get to work with a liaison organization on an important problem. So students also, besides senior year, can get involved in research, especially during the summers. And so I encourage you to think about all of the different ways that you could get involved in undergraduate research opportunities at Harvey Mudd. Okay, so sorry, I know I've been talking a lot. I'm going to invite my colleague now, Julie Madero, to join. And now we're going to jump into our next segment, which is to give you a little sneak preview about that course that I mentioned to you, Core 99, which we call the Impact course.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Madero. I'm a computer science professor here at Harvey Mudd. This is my 12th year at Harvey Mudd. And for the past 3 years, I've been one of the instructors, along with Prof. Yang, of this course that we call the Impact course. So Tira told you that you can tell a lot about an institution by their mission. Harvey Mudd is the kind of place where people can recite the mission statement. It's very important to us. And several years ago, when we were doing a full review of our core curriculum, we talked with current faculty, we talked with current students, with staff, with our alumni, and we asked everybody, what are our goals for this core curriculum? Where are we doing really well? And where are there things we think we could be doing even better? And one of the places we felt like we could be doing a better job in those first 2 years, before students moved into their majors, before they moved to their capstones, was in providing a space to really engage deeply with this impact of your work on society part of our mission statement. And as a teaching team, we have a team of 7 faculty that have taught this course. We got together and we said, all of the really big problems in the world that are interesting enough for us to get really excited about wanting to solve them require lots of different people with lots of different backgrounds and perspectives and types of knowledge to work together to solve them. Climate change is an example of the space we started thinking in, and we have an atmospheric chemist on our teaching team. You absolutely need to know some chemistry, some atmospheric chemistry to understand what's going on with greenhouse gases, to understand how those affect our climate. But you also need to know a whole lot about economics, about policy, about modeling, about ecology, to know how different plant and animal species are impacted by changes to our climate. And so for these really big problems, what we have an opportunity to do in this course is model and practice together some of that transdisciplinary learning and thinking. And what I love about this course is that it's a course I couldn't imagine teaching in the same way anywhere else, because we have this core curriculum where all of our students have taken biology and chemistry and computer science and engineering and mathematics and physics and writing and courses in the humanities, social sciences, and the arts. We have a common background that we can build on to really engage with these hard problems. All right, next slide. So what this course looks like is, in the first half of the semester, we spend time building, we call a transdisciplinary toolkit. So we have our faculty from all of their different disciplines take some time talking about what their discipline has to contribute to helping us understand the big problem that we're all trying to grapple with together. And in the most recent version of this course, that topic was one that we'll see in a couple of slides, but one very close and relevant and real to us here in Southern California. But we all spend time building up this toolkit of frameworks and ways of thinking and processes that we can use to really understand the causes of the problem, the impacts of the problem, who is affected by the problem and in what ways, so that we can then, you go to second slide, next slide. Oh, I thought I had one more in there. All right, that's all right. So we'll move on. Let's go on to the next piece of this. And I'll pass off again to Prof. Young to help us think about how these different disciplines might help us understand a big problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Prof. Madero. So on the screen, hopefully you all can see this image. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about it, and would love for you all to think for about 30 seconds. What do you see in this picture? What do you notice? And what do you wonder about it? And would love if you all could really think about it, because I'm going to ask you to share something in the Zoom chat in just a second. Okay, now that you've thought about it a little bit, I know maybe not enough time, but if you have the ability to do so and it's safe, hopefully you're not driving or something, okay, team? But if you are okay with it, would you please type something in the chat as much as you're comfortable? Tell us something you notice about this picture, or something you're wondering about this picture. I love it. Let's keep it coming. So in case you can't see the chat, I'm going to kind of highlight some of the things that we see. People are wondering, it seems like it's a wildfire taken up from high up. People are wondering how it was taken, where it was, when did this happen? Somebody mentioned that there might be particulates in the air. Can we predict where the fire will go based on the wind? Such a great question. Is the fire close to any communities? Oh, I love this question. Are the people okay? Yeah, I'm thinking about that too. Right. The smoke is moving toward an urban area blown by the wind. It's a mountainous region. There's a lot of smoke and activity. There also seems to be a river, question mark, could be. How will the fire be put out? Oh, I love this question by Constantine. What is the most efficient prevention measure? So they're even thinking ahead about like how we deal with this sort of situation. Why is there a black swirl toward the center of the image? What started the wildfire? Yeah, so great. Are the animals affected? So cool. Great question. Is that water or smoke? Hmm. Great questions. All right, so keep them coming. We'll tell you a little bit more about this picture. And for those of you who are native to California, I just want to give you a heads up. This is something very close to home for us. So the next thing that's going to happen is that you're going to see what the first day of this core impact class looked like, because this is exactly what we did. We started class by showing everyone this picture, and then to model the kind of transdisciplinary thinking that Prof. Madero just mentioned, you're going to see a short video in which all of us professors will just reflect to ourselves on what we notice and wonder, but through our disciplinary lens. So I wonder if we can cue up that video next.
I'm Lilia Hawkins, Professor of Climate Studies and Chemistry. As an atmospheric chemist, I see air pollution. I think of the vast number of different compounds being emitted into the lower atmosphere as gases and as particles. I'm thinking about the way the sunlight can drive certain reactions in this chemical soup, creating radical species which can then form even more toxic products under certain conditions. Meanwhile, the particles are evolving in their size and shape and color, which alter their climate impacts and their health effects. And my husband happens to be a firefighter. So when I see an image like this, I am thinking of the firefighters who are putting themselves in harm's way to evacuate residents and to protect property. And because I know which fire this is, I'm transported back to the day when my spouse texted me in the middle of my own first course on climate change, telling me that his hometown was being rapidly overrun by this fire.
Hi everyone, I'm Professor Hamilton. I'm a historian of science, technology, and medicine. And when I see this smoke spreading across the state, I think about how some groups are going to be more vulnerable. We're looking at CDC data showing how rates of asthma are higher for Black Americans and Native Americans. This is largely due to the fact that poorer communities of color are exposed to air pollution at much higher rates, even before wildfire smoke. And it turns out that there is this persistent medical myth that Black lungs are less capacious than white lungs. This is based on some very bad data that was collected during the Civil War that got coded into a medical instrument called a spirometer. And doctors are just now starting to question these racial corrections that can lead to underdiagnosis of asthma and also overconfidence in asthma treatments. So all of these layers of environmental and medical racism mean that some groups are going to be more vulnerable to wildfire smoke, and those same groups are going to struggle to make that harm visible.
I'm Julie Madero, and I'm a computer scientist. I spend a lot of time working with and interpreting large data sets. So when I look at this picture, I first think about how drastically and quickly our ability to collect large data sets has changed. Satellite images like this one provide incredibly high-resolution images, and satellites can also capture all sorts of other information about surface and atmospheric conditions. At the same time, as a Claremonter who's experienced nearby wildfires, I'm reminded of how much is hidden by the layer of smoke between the satellite and the ground. That's a good reminder to me that data can help us construct an understanding of our environment, but only if we're carefully aware of what the data represents and what it obscures.
I'm Steve Adolph from the Biology Department at MUD. My field of study within biology is ecology. The wildfire that I see in this photo is an example of a disturbance, which is a common occurrence in ecosystems. Disturbances sometimes increase ecological diversity as the habitat recovers and new species colonize the area. This particular disturbance is happening on a landscape scale. Other types of disturbance events can happen on smaller or larger spatial scales. Another thing that ecologists study is how matter and energy cycle between different compartments of an ecosystem. In this case, carbon that was contained by the living and dead biomass of the forest is being moved in the form of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Eventually, as the forest regrows, some of that carbon will be taken up again through photosynthesis and become plant biomass once again. The final thing that I see is the smoke, which contains a lot of water vapor. This is a byproduct of combustion of the carbon compounds that plants consist of.
Hi, I'm Rachel Mayeri, Professor of Media Studies, and what I see is called the Anthropocene Sublime. The Anthropocene is the name that's been given to our present geological epoch, in which human beings are the dominant influence on climate and the environment. We've been pumping up fossil fuels from the earth, producing huge amounts of carbon dioxide, heating the atmosphere and the oceans, and causing deforestation as we develop human settlements and agriculture, and have resulted in mass extinction. The sublime is a term used during the Romantic period to describe something or an experience of something awesome, terrible, or beyond comprehension. Painters in the 18th century tried to capture the sublime with staggering natural forces, volcanoes, shipwrecks, and avalanches. In the Anthropocene sublime, we're shocked by the vastness and scale of industrial forces changing the face of the earth. Seeing the fire and smoke in paradise from a satellite perspective makes we individuals feel small and powerless, when ironically it's our collective actions heating the environment that have made wildfires larger and more destructive.
Hi, I'm Daryl Young, professor of mathematics. This picture of the forest fire at the zoomed out level makes me think of cellular automata models of fire like this one. We will talk more about how mathematics can be used to model the climate and forest fires like this later in the course. Mathematical models are often used by people to make predictions about the future or to simulate hypothetical situations. But because mathematical models are created by humans to answer questions, these models therefore are laden with the assumptions, values, and goals of the model's creators. For example, think about how each pixel in this model represents a certain part of the Earth and all of the animals, people, plants, rocks, soil, water within it. When a pixel changes from green or brown to red, what does that actually mean? What is the goal of keeping track of whether these pixels end up green, brown, or red? Sometimes these assumptions, values, and goals are explicitly stated, sometimes not. And so, mathematical models need to be critically analyzed as we create and use them.
So looking at the picture, I want to ask, how will this be interpreted by religious individuals? And then what kinds of actions or attitudes will those interpretations lead to? What does this mean for faith? Does it cause a crisis? Or maybe somehow it might confirm something for someone about their faith? So take Protestant Christians, for example, of which there are many, many types. Some may call themselves creation care activists because they believe that God gave humanity stewardship over the planet to use, but also to care for and protect. So they may see this picture and be inspired to work with scientists and others to mitigate climate change and its consequences, like the intensification of wildfires. Others might say there should be nothing done. They see this catastrophic wildfire as just one of the many possible natural disasters that will precede Jesus Christ's second coming and the start of the apocalypse, both of which in various ways they really want. So with little time before the end times, they advocate trying to save people's eternal souls rather than taking time to try to save the planet. Yet others may fear wildfire as a divine punishment for a nation's or a community's sins, not an individual's. They desire to appease an angry God and may therefore decide to become more politically active, advocating regulation of social and sexual behaviors to put American society more in line with biblical mores rather than advocating for things like the regulation of carbon emissions. So when I see this picture, I see how factoring in religious perspectives is vital for understanding a wide range of responses to environmental disasters.
All right, so hopefully you can get a sense there of how in the first half of this semester, all of those faculty are able to spend some time helping us to think about some of the causes of wildfires. I saw some of the questions we think about are, are wildfires bad? Maybe not always, but when we think about how they might impact people, how they might impact other life, there are, we don't want people being hurt. We don't want our houses being damaged, but there are important connections to how forests are maintained. Prof. Adolf has a really fascinating lecture where he tells us about how some plant and animal species are adapted and actually need to be exposed to heat or even to smoke to be able to reproduce. So he tells us about one particular type of pine that doesn't open its seeds unless it's exposed to fire. And it's not even the heat. The thing that I think is really cool about this is you can actually trick this plant into opening its seeds by exposing it to liquid smoke. So it's the smoke that is the trigger to get those plants to reproduce. And so we get a much more complicated understanding of what's going on over the course of this semester. And then in the second half, we switch to the other thing I saw people talking about in the comments, which is, so what do we do about this? And we have a chance over the course of this semester for students to pick one, we call it an intervention because we feel like that's more neutral than a solution. One thing someone has suggested doing to address a piece of the problem around wildfires. Students last year did deep investigations of undergrounding of electrical lines, of making changes to building codes, of using different types of sensors and machine learning models to detect when there's lightning way out in the hills where you might not have anybody that can see it, of improving emergency communication systems, of implementing clean air centers, places people can go to get air that's safe to breathe if there are fires near them, of using camera networks to detect when fires start up in places where people might not see them so that we could address them before they get too big. Yes, absolutely. Satellite monitoring is another way that we can keep an eye on what's going on, of this growing practice of people hiring private firefighters to be responsible for putting out the fire on their property. And they used all the tools they learned in the first half of the semester then to think through what problem their intervention, what tiny piece of the problem that intervention is actually trying to address, and to evaluate who is impacted by that problem, who's actually helped by the intervention. Hopefully there's an alignment there. If not, that's something we want to recognize and identify. And then think through whether or not the intervention is actually set up to be bringing in all of the right perspectives to be likely to have the impact that we want. And our hope is that this gives our students a chance to develop a skill set that I think is very rare for students to have as sophomores in college, to be able to really intentionally think through where to put their time and their energy into to have the kind of impact on the problems they care about that they want to have. Prof. Young, what
Yeah,
would you
and
add there?
yeah, that's so great. Thank you. And also, team, I just really appreciate the very many comments and great observations that you've been making. Please keep them up. I love that. I just wanted to mention to you that maybe you might have run into or heard our president, Harriet Nemhart, talk about Harvey Mudd College. She likes to talk about Harvey Mudd as a place where we try to make STEM for a better world. And I hope that this little presentation kind of gives you a little glimpse about what we mean by that. So, you know, it probably is the case that California wildfires is like not the thing that you care the most about. It could be a lot of other things that you care about. But the point about this class is that we're trying to give students the tools so that they can make an impact on the things that they care about, whichever that might be. A lot of our students here care so much about the environment and lots of other things. And I think by taking this class, they walk out of this class with a more nuanced, a more rich understanding about the ways in which science, engineering, mathematics can play a role in those big problems. So I'm all for people going off and designing like a new invention or a new system, and that's great. But this is where, going back to what I said earlier, we need people who can be good at STEM, but also be good at the humanities, social sciences, and the arts. Because even if you made the world's best invention, who is that invention designed for? Who gets to use it? Who gets to buy it? What about all of the potential negative effects about that particular invention or that device? These are all the things that we have to think about, the ethical and moral and the environmental considerations. And it's not something that one person can do alone. It really takes a team. And so what we're trying to do is to help people develop those kinds of skills to be able to work with one another in order to solve some of the world's most pressing, biggest challenging problems. Anything else, Prof. Madero, that you want to add along the way?
No, that's excellent summary. Thank you.
Great. Well, oh, maybe one more thing. Could analyzing how to design solutions that better appeal? Oh yeah, definitely. One of the classes, if you're interested in that topic, David, is the person that you saw earlier, Lilia Hawkins. Prof. Hawkins teaches a class with a psychologist to think about the different kinds of ways that we can message about climate change in order to better appeal to different groups of people. Because a lot of the times, the kind of scare tactic messages about climate change, like the world is ending, blah, blah, blah. Okay, recycle your plastic. Like those messages don't really work. But there are ways, if you look into the psychological literature, like there are actually ways that you can message to get people to change their behaviors. That's really ultimately what we want to do, right? To get people to do different things in order to, make the planet better, for example. Okay, anyway, so yes,
Another
go.
person I would point to in that space is Dr. Catherine Hayhoe. She was a speaker who came to Harvey Mudd and visited our course a couple of years ago and is doing really just incredible work in thinking about how each of us maybe has a role in messaging around issues that we care about. And her issue is very definitely climate change, and how you can build those connections to communities that you are a part of, find the commonalities that you have with people in different communities, and use those commonalities as a starting point for building discussion, instead of focusing on places where you have different opinions. She has a great newsletter that always ends with some positive, like, okay, so what can I do? Which I love, that there's always here are some concrete steps we can take right now to help build the world we want.
All right, I think that's it for us. I'm going to turn it back over to Natalia and Tira.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Everyone, please help me give a virtual round of applause for our amazing HMC faculty. We are going to go ahead and move on over to the next portion of our presentation as we say goodbye to our professors. We're going to talk a little bit more about HMC, our admission and financial aid policies, and then we're going to jump into that Q&A session. So just like Professor Yang was saying, definitely ask our students, ask them their perspectives on these different classes. You'll get to hear from them in a little bit, but let's go ahead and let's talk about admissions. So you should be able to see now or a little bit about admission and financial aid. So hi everyone, again, my name is Natalia. I'm the Associate Director of Admission here at Harvey Mudd, and let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about what it would take to apply to Harvey Mudd. So obviously you heard about our amazing academics. If you are interested in applying and going through the admissions process, maybe you're a junior or a senior, there are a couple of things you should know about Harvey Mudd. So first, we are exclusively on the Common App. That's the only place you can apply to us. So as you are going through your process, you can add Harvey Mudd as a member institution, and you will notice that we do have a couple of requirements specific to us. The first one is that we do have 2 supplemental essay questions. One of them is a little bit longer in length, the other one a little bit shorter. And that shorter one is actually the one that really kind of resonates with exactly what Prof. Young and Prof. Madero were talking about today. And that is, and we're going to ask you about your ideal humanities, social science, or arts class. So you should have an idea at this point that that is a big portion of your time at Mudd. About a third of your time is going to be spent understanding how STEM, the humanities, the social sciences, the arts, they all interact. And so we are going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your ideal class. It's up to you, however you want to answer that. We get so many different ways, whether it's a class that you found on your campus that you love, your high school campus, or something on Mudd's campus, or a class that doesn't exist anywhere and you want to tell us about it. We love hearing any and everything in this process. Now, as far as teacher recommendations, this looks a little bit different for Harvey Mudd. So we actually require 2 letters of recommendation, but we will accept up to 3 in total. So 2 letters of recommendation recommendation, one has to come from a STEM teacher. So any of the STEM different disciplines. If your high school, is a STEM school and has those opportunities, feel free. Otherwise, any of the different classes. So math professor, science professor, computer science, whatever it might be, kind of in those different realms. And then the other one has to come from a humanities, social sciences, or the arts. So history, English, foreign language, things like that will all kind of cover these disciplines for you. So with that being said, you can turn in one additional letter of recommendation. So if you have a coach or a research professor or a mentor, or someone that you want to turn in, feel free. But we do just ask that you try not to go above that 3-letter of recommendation limit. Now on that slide, you'll also notice we have something called an enrollment requirement. So Prof. Young showed you what our core curriculum looks like. And so in order to set our students up for success here at Harvey Mudd, we want to make sure that you have those kind of building blocks for you to be able to go ahead and jump into our core curriculum. And that's going to require you to actually complete 1 year of high school equivalent calculus, chemistry, and physics. This is the one that we get a lot of questions about. We get questions, can my dual enrollment class count for this? Can my AP class? Can my IB class? Yes, 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 that will all count as long as it's essentially 1 year's worth. But we will be around, like I said, in the Q&A. You can always put them in the chat or the Q&A session later on if you have a specific question. But just know that it's 1 year of high school calculus, chemistry, and physics. And the key role in this is that it is actually an enrollment requirement, not an application requirement, which means that you don't have to complete it by the time you're applying your senior year. If you are completing these requirements your senior year, that is completely fine. If something happens and your physics teacher quits in the middle of senior year and you can't complete it, that's also fine. We offer conditional admission to a handful of students every year. So we give you some time to go ahead and complete this before you enroll in the fall semester of your first year. That's essentially the deadline. Once you are starting classes at Mudd, we need to make sure you're ready for those classes. So keep that in mind. Now, if you are a senior and you are going through the college application process this fall, just know that we are test optional for ACT and SAT. So 2 separate standardized tests. We are test optional for both of them. If you are a junior or a sophomore, or maybe even a first-year freshman kind of joining us in this process, first off, kudos to you for being so ahead into this, but we are actually in the review process for our test optional policy. So I would check back on Harvey Mudd's website within the coming months to see whether or not we are going to remain test optional or if there's an announcement. But at this point, just kind of keep that in mind, that there's a possibility that that process might look a little bit different depending on what class year you are. Now, with that being said, on the right side of the slide, I'm going to kind of quickly cover what is on this side. So if you are unfamiliar with early decision is a binding round. So early decision 1 and early decision 2 both mean that this is your number 1 school. You are applying to this institution because you want to go here. If you get in, you are coming. You, yourself, your family, and your guidance counselor all signed essentially the early decision agreement, saying that this is where you would go if you were admitted to the institution. It looks different if you've ever heard of early action at other institutions, or maybe early restrictive action. Those do not exist on Harvey Mudd's campus. We only offer early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision. Regular decision is you can apply to as many institutions as you would like. When you hear back from Harvey Mudd, you get to choose whether or not you attend the institution. So it looks a little bit different. Keep that in mind as you are filling out your application processes. Just know we don't really have a preference for which of the different rounds you apply for between early decision 1 and early decision 2. With those 2 rounds combined, you typically see about 42 to 45% of the admitted class come between those rounds, depending on the year. Everyone else typically is admitted through the regular decision round. So we're trying not to force it so that you feel like you have to do an early decision round, but rather you have the opportunity to choose whichever round makes the most sense for you, your college process, and your family and their financial process. Now, this is the most important slide when we're reviewing the admissions process, because it's kind of like a bit of a peek behind the lens in terms of how we review applications here at Harvey Mudd. So if you've not seen this slide before, everything on the right is essentially more or less at the heart of the application process, because it is actually what is turned in by you or turned in on your behalf. So keep that in mind. On the right side, you're looking, your school context, your lived experience, those different things are going to come from a school report, from your Common App, from your words directly, or from those, maybe your recommenders, what that might look like. Your preparedness for core curriculum, we're going to be looking for that, like I said, because it is an enrollment requirement. We're going to look and see, did you take a calculus class? Did you take a chemistry class? Did you take a physics class? If you didn't, are you planning to? Are you aware of our enrollment requirements? So keeping that in mind. Versus everything on the left of the slide that you're currently looking at is more or less the different conversations and different areas that we are looking and having throughout our review process. So Harvey Med practices what's known as holistic admission, which means that we review everything that you submit to us. But we also practice CBE, where we actually read in pairs and we have conversations together about these different areas. So we discuss, how did the student engage with their community? Were they able to create opportunities for others? Did they create opportunities for themselves? Were they resourceful? Did they have to be resourceful? Those are kind of different conversations that we have throughout our review process. And of course, at kind of the core of everything, we're also looking to see that mission statement. Do you connect with the mission? You've heard a ton about it today, how it impacts our academics on campus. Do you connect with our type of academics, with our type of mission that we are actually promoting in this process? So keep that in mind, your values, your potential. We're taking multiple steps back, I should say, and looking at it from the larger picture lens. But this is just to give you an idea of what this looks like on MUD's campus. And then, of course, let's talk about financial aid. So what does this look like on our campus for Harvey Mudd? If you are looking to apply for financial aid, there's need-based aid and there's merit-based aid. So those are kind of two different pools of funding on our campus. We meet 100% of demonstrated need for all students. So if your family is applying for need-based aid, that's typically going to be through the FAFSA, so the free application for federal student aid, or the CSS profile. So there are two separate applications that you will need to go ahead and complete. And if you complete those, we will meet 100% of the demonstrated need that your family needs. So whatever amount that is, we guarantee that we'll go ahead and meet that. We are also need blind in our admissions process for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. So that means here in the admissions office, your admission decision is never impacted by whether or not your family needs financial aid. That's what the need blind process means. So need-based financial aid, it looks a little bit different for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. If you happen to be an international student, we are need aware in that process. So it does look slightly different there. And then of course, this is kind of an update for this year. We are no loans for families who have an annual household income below $100,000 with typical assets. Of course, it looks a little bit different for every single family. So this is the part where I recommend that you go ahead and actually scan that QR code that's on the slide, learn about the net price calculator. It is a federally mandated tool for every school to have on their website. And it kind of tells you what more or less a ballpark number of what this might look like for you and your family situation. So just kind of putting that out there. If you have not, I would highly recommend taking advantage of that tool and using it to the best of your ability. On the other side of the slide, let's talk merit-based aid. So if you are not applying for need-based aid, or if you are applying for need-based aid, that's also fine because everyone is automatically considered for merit-based aid. So to give you an idea, when you turn in your Common App, you're automatically considered for some of our merit scholarships. The ones that are on your screen are actually the ones that you would need to submit an additional application for. And we'll talk about those in a second. But the ones that you're automatically considered for, those are typically things like our Harvey S. Mudd Award. It's about $10,000 each year for the 4 years. So it totals out to about $40,000 at the end of your 4 years. Keeping that in mind, the three that are on your screen, if you happen to be a part of FIRST or VEX Robotics, those are separate institutions or separate organizations that we partner with as an institution that we have individual scholarships for. They vary in amount. I would highly recommend taking a look on our financial aid website to learn a little bit more. The President Scholars is totally different. That is just a Harvey Mudd specific merit-based scholarship. It's for students who are looking to be leaders in STEM. And you heard Prof. Young talk about our President Harriet Nemhard. You actually get the opportunity to be mentored by her. She's very involved in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so just kind of having access to her network, having the ability to go ahead and be mentored by an amazing systems engineer and a Claremont alum as well. And then of course, this scholarship particularly comes with it is full tuition covered all 4 years. So keep that in mind. It is the largest merit scholarship we have on our campus. And it does require an interview process to go through if you are interested in that. All of those separate scholarships, the President Scholars, FIRST and VEX Robotics, typically go live later in the fall. So typically around November, December, and are due usually about end of January, about early February, depending on the year. So I would take a look and see what that looks like for your year. Keep keep an eye on the deadlines just in case they change. And of course, if you are interested, just know that every single student, no matter what round, is considered for these. So if you apply early decision and you hear back from us before this application goes live for, let's say, President Scholars, that's fine. You're still considered for those merit scholarships later in the process. Now, rounding things out, of course, we want to tell you why we do what we do here on campus, why we do our academics the way that we do them, and why all of these different classes, the opportunity for you to have a major, for you to do an HSA concentration, and why the core curriculum is so important. Well, this is why, because our students are graduating and we're hearing from those employers that our students are strong communicators, that they're skilled collaborators, that they understand how to solve things from an interdisciplinary lens, from an interdisciplinary approach. This is what makes our alums so successful, and obviously what our outcomes look like and why it looks so well for Harvey Med. So if you're unfamiliar with what Harvey Med is able to accomplish as an institution, hopefully this gives you a little bit of peek behind the lens that we are ranked the #1 return on investment school in the nation, that you can see the average median starting salary for this last graduating class in May. I would highly recommend taking a look on our career services website, seeing the last couple of years of graduating class data, and just seeing how amazing Harvey Med is able, and the amazing things that Harvey Med is able to do throughout the years. But this is to give you kind of a big picture lens on why it's worth doing the academics, why it's worth understanding all these different topics from such an interdisciplinary approach. Anyways, with that, we are going to wrap up. And so as I mentioned, we do have a Q&A session right after this, but we would love for you to stay in touch with us. We have a ton of different ways. If you are not in the Claremont area or Southern California area and able to make it to campus, there are different virtual events we do have throughout the rest of the fall. You can register for any of them at any time, but you can also connect with us in so many different ways. I will go ahead and leave this up for a second, but if you are able to make it to campus, please register for an official tour, get the opportunity to interact with your admission counselor. You saw them at the very beginning of today's presentation, but we love getting a chance to meet folks in person and answer all of your questions as you go through this. And of course, if you are not able to do either of those, we would highly recommend you also follow us on social media. So we do have an Instagram, a TikTok, and there is a student-run Discord. So some of the students that you will actually interact with today in the Q&A session, they are on the student-run Discord. It is for prospective students, for you to ask any and all questions of Mudders. There are a ton of different students in here. So if you have questions particularly about any of the different majors, anything that maybe we aren't able to answer today, please feel free to go ahead and actually scan these QR codes. I'm going to leave them up for about 5 more seconds, but I will put them back up and we'll put some links in the chat as well. But I'm going to go ahead and explain what the Q&A session is going to look like. So first of all, we are going to have a breakout room in just a second. This is for prospective students. We do have Harvey Med students that are going to be leading this session for you. We will go ahead and they will take the lead while the rest of the admission staff are going to stay in the main breakout room. So if you're a family member, if you're an admission or a high school counselor, or if you just want to talk to an admission counselor directly, you are more than welcome to go ahead and stay in the main breakout room. Otherwise, you are welcome to kind of navigate back and forth. If you are not able to stay for the last 30 minutes of today's program, we understand. You're always welcome to go ahead and email our office should you have any questions.